Meanwhile, Russia is sending special teams to help clear the landmines in Palmyry. President Assad claims that some countries, particularly members of the US-led coalition, are not ready to accept the success of Palmyra's liberation. He was speaking to Sputnik news agency in his first international interview since ISIL was defeated in the ancient city.
It's been 2 days since Palmyra was liberated, but a number of countries, some involved in fights against terror and who are members of the US-led coalition, haven't made their assessment. I want to be clear. I'm talking about regimes in France and the UK. They haven't made any comment yet. There are reasons for that. Firstly, the occupation of Palmyra by terrorists a year ago became evidence of the coalition's failure and a lack of seriousness in fighting terrorists, especially ISIL. The liberation of Palmyra took place with Russia's help. It's another factor that shows the lack of seriousness on behalf of Western countries.
Well, Assad has criticised countries, including Britain, for failing to join forces against terrorism. And on Wednesday, the UK Foreign Secretary argued against closer collaboration with Moscow, claiming that Russia was a threat.
I have no doubt that Russia is sincere in its desire to defeat Daesh in Iraq and Syria. We can't be working in partnership with a country one day and find that it is doing just exactly whatever it wants in flagrant breach of international norms and rules the next day.
Well, it's really the same old story and the same old rhetoric. No matter what Russia does, Philip Hammond's and the British government's record stays the same. They've been pretty consistently critical of Russia, no matter what. When Russia started its military campaign in Syria last year, the Prime Minister here, David Cameron, he said that it was a, quote, terrible mistake. Then, when Russia announced that it was pulling out of Syria earlier this month, Philip Hammond said that praising Vladimir Putin for pulling out of Syria would be like praising a man who has stopped beating his wife. He said that in Parliament and to MPs. So when it comes to the way that Russia is viewed here in Britain by the British government, there's almost a sense that you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And that's the sort of comments where you can see that Russia's basically just being held up like a de facto bad guy, bogeyman style sort of thing to frighten people with. And the language that we've seen Philip Hammond employ has been really quite strong and quite scathing. He said everything we do is being undermined by the Russians. The problem with the Russians, he said last month, is that while they're talking, they are also bombing. And that's really the crux of the issue, that Russia is seen as a problem and not as a path to a potential solution, as an international partner that they could come to a solution with together. For example, the recent recapture of Palmyra in Syria, when Assad forces, backed by Russia, drove out ISIL terrorists. Neither David Cameron nor Philip Hammond breathed a word about it. That's despite the fact that even the Pentagon said that this was good news, and they praised Russia for playing a constructive role in Syria's ceasefire.
They said initially that their primary goal was to go after ISIL in Syria, and they are doing so now. We, again, think that's a good thing. They're playing a constructive role with regard to the cessation of hostilities.
No such atmosphere from the British side. We're just getting very critical comments like the one we heard from Philip Hammond.